now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening. Whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening, I hope you're doing okay. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com. Or give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Find out why I go all the way to St. Simon's for an authentic Italian meal. And an espresso, too, and a cannoli. And I put on too much weight when I go there. Go there. Find out why. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, you knew it was coming, my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, was available right now where all good books are sold, and you can get a copy of this book right now. Right now. Like while you're watching or listening to the show, just go to BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com. Find out why I'm so adamant about getting Tom Molyneux's story told. And finally, today's show is being brought to us in part by our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week boxing channel, Billy C. Boxing. Find out all the information, how you can watch it on Roku and all the other top streaming services. Just visit GinicoUSA.com. That's GINIKO USA.com. And it's free. Sign up, create an account. It's free. Did I mention it's free? Yeah, the beauty of this thing, just so you know, Sal and I did some other specials. You've heard us talking about the Billy C. Boxing Revisited. Well, that's up there. Some other shows that we've done is up there. Some shows I've done years ago are up there. Some great stuff. And I'm not talking about this show. I'm talking about live events and special events, some great interviews. You got to check it out. You won't regret it. Anyway, we're going to be talking about all the big fights that took place this past weekend. We'll start off with the most publicized fight. Tank Davis, Gervonta Davis, made quick work of former world champion Hugo Ruiz last night. 2 minutes and 59 seconds of the very first round. Tank Davis looked fantastic, really. But like I said, we didn't see 3 full minutes of action. But the thing I love about this guy is that he's got the hand speed and the accuracy, and he is a fighter. He referred to himself as a fighter. And I really believe he is. I really believe he is. The sad part is the sport of boxing today, will we get a chance to see him actually fight? I mean, no disrespect to Hugo Ruiz. He's a former world champion, but he was also moving up in weight. It was evident that he couldn't take the shots from Tank Davis, despite Tank Davis being smaller. He was just a compact, more powerful package. And at the end of the fight, when they talked to Ruiz, he said everything that he threw just seemed so hard and powerful. And you wouldn't think that, a 10-pound difference would be that much, but it really affected Hugo Ruiz last night. Joining me to get his thoughts is the man I mentioned before. Yeah, the guy who gives me pizza, cannolis, all that other stuff, Sal, Rocky Senecola. Good morning, Sal.
Good morning, Billy C. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing well, thank you. What did you think of the fight, brother?
Well, I'll tell you what. I was looking forward to it. And, you and I, we've always liked Tank Davis. And he went through a period where we thought he was losing a little bit of his momentum with getting a little bit away from his core program with his training and fighting and his head. But I'll tell you what, I know he went to the boot camp of Cunningham, like a couple of other fighters. And he looks like he's back on track, and he's straight, and he's solid. And he's going to be an exciting fighter if he stays on track for years to come. And I thought he was very good, very effective, obviously, as a southpaw. That right jab, you made a note. Not only was it fast, but he was so accurate with it. That thing kept going out there like a trip hammer. And it hit Ruiz, and it opened up other things. And before the end came, Ruiz caught Tank with a right lead, but had no effect. And then, boom, right away, you saw that Tank threw a straight left hand as a southpaw, and he followed it with a picture-perfect right hook. And it was a delayed reaction, but Ruiz went down, and he had enough. That was it.
You know, what I like about Davis is that, and I hope it's not just because he's young, but when he goes in, and to me, I've seen it in all of his fights. He did have the one fight where he looked very ordinary when he came in overweight, lost his title on the scale. But for the most part, he goes in to destroy his opponent. And I'm not saying he's a wild fighter. You know, I'll get to a wild fighter a little bit later, but he's not wild. But he's aggressive. He's moving forward. As you indicate, he sets everything up with his jab. He's got really, he's fast. There's no question about it. He's very, very fast and accurate. The inactivity could hurt him. The fact that this particular fight, did not go one round, and then depending upon when he fights again, the lack of going, the distance, so to speak, and I don't even mean going the distance of 12 rounds. I mean just going several rounds, right. May hurt him. The other thing that bothers me, leading up to this fight, there was an article written on the Ring Observer. My man Mitch sent this to me, and I got all uptight of it. Now, I don't like to talk about Floyd Mayweather anymore because I don't consider him relevant to the sport of boxing right now, even though there's talk of him coming back and all of that, and we'll talk about it when it happens. But I can't help but mentioning that he was the promoter of record last night for the Tank Davis fight, and he was in the press, and basically he admitted that he's hand-picking easy opponents for Gervonta Davis, and he wants people to understand that, it's not Davis's fault, it's his fault. And, I just got to thinking, and the way, the way he justifies this is he says, to keep value in fighters, you can't have them lose because the networks won't want them and you can't bill them as being undefeated, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where I really think the sport was ruined by Floyd. Floyd Mayweather, there's no secret that I'm not a big fan of his, but the truth is early in his career, prior to him going on his own, he fought a lot of tough guys at the lower weights, lightweight and what have you. And then once he freed himself from Bob Arum, he went on this cherry-picking thing, and for all due respect for him, he parlayed it into a very successful financial career. But the price that it really paid, in my opinion, was that it ruined the outlook on the sport of boxing, because now networks say, well, we need a guy like Floyd Mayweather. We need an undefeated guy. Let's not put your fighter on unless he's undefeated. So a manager and a promoter say, well, we can't risk getting a loss. So they build up these fighters with less than stellar opposition. And here's another example that Floyd is even publicly stating that he would do that. I don't think that's fair to Tank Davis. Sal, what's your thoughts?
Well, I understand. Styles make fights. From the history of the first bell or hammer ever hitting something to resonate as a start. I could see Floyd just looking for the optimal style that would make his fighters look very good and have an opportunity to defeat their opponent. However, with that being said, if you're looking at former world champions or guys past their prime or something else that you hint that might be cherry picked, there's always that chance. any given night. Anybody could lose. So even if that was the goal or that was what he's planning to do and that's what he's done, it's still subject to a couple of other variables that come into the play the night of the fight. It's probability and outcome, like the laws of nature or actuaries or whatever. I'm not getting too much into that, but I think that the zero, the O, in someone's record, yes, it's saleable, it's marketable, it's great, but when you have a few losses and you're in some good wars and you come back and you maybe have a rematch and you defeat your opponent and you do things. I mean, that's the legacy of boxing. Those are the great fighters that we talk about every day that come up at a kitchen table or living room or water cooler. I mean, you look at everybody that has happened to them. The Marvin Haglers, the Roberto Duran, the Sugar Ray Leonard, the greatest fighter of all time, in my opinion, Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, except Rocky Marciano. I'm sorry, almost put him in there. But I'll tell you what, it just goes to show that you could still have a marketable, profitable, stellar, legendary career if you have an O, if you have a defeat. It's what you do after the defeat and how you learn from that defeat and how you come back. You're a fighter. And when you have that mentality as a fighter, you're going to keep in the fight for as long as you physically and emotionally and mentally can. So I think that, Floyd looking to do what he does best, protecting those O's, is one thing. But I think Davis is the kind of guy, he seems to be the kind of guy, he's going to want to challenge himself. He's going to want to say, hey, I want to fight the best because I am the best. And, I think we'll hear about that. And I think that, it'll be a good couple of years. He'll have a good reign and a good grasp on the boxing world.
It's not the fighter's fault. I don't want to believe it's a fighter. With the exception of Floyd, I don't think any fighter says, "Hey, I want to, I want to avoid all the best challenges. I just want to make the most money." And in respect to Floyd, he didn't say that in the beginning. He realized that, he was going to, pull the scam of the sport, by doing what he did the last decade of his career. But the real issue is the lack of boxing knowledge from the people who make the decisions to put a fight on, and thinking that as long as a fighter is undefeated, that equates to a quality fighter. It's a shame because, like you said, a lot of fighters that come up with a loss and then they come back, chances are, most of the time, if they had, if they were a quality fighter to begin with, they learn from that loss and they get better. I'm convinced that fighters of today just don't get a chance to develop like they can by coddling them. And I don't want to see that happen with Davis. I think Davis, he definitely has all the tools to be a great fighter, a historical fighter. I mean, I'm telling you, I think that Tank Davis is that good. He has the tools to be one of these historically great fighters. And I think that if he's not given the chance to get in some real fights with some real opposition and learn to avoid a square punch. The punch you talked about when Ruiz landed, that was like square on the button. It was like somebody put an X right on his face. I mean, boom, right in his face. His hands were down. What happens with these highly talented fighters when they're constantly fighting less than stellar opposition, their defense suffers because they don't have to worry about it. Or they're put in with a guy that doesn't have much pop, so they don't have to worry about getting put on their butt. All these things that happen. It's a shame, and I just think that a fighter needs that opportunity to get better. Sal,
I agree with you, and I think that fortunately, a good amateur career, you do a lot of your testing there. But when you're going through a 10-round fight, yeah, you've got to learn the whole mentality and mindset. And that's part of it, Bill, is developing a fighter's mind into the, it's different when you are fighting a 4-round fight, 6-round fight. But when you're involved in a war in a 10-round fight, you don't have time to take your focus off. You don't have time. You got to keep the blinders on. You got to keep intense. You got to keep yourself mentally sharp and alert and in the fight. Because if you don't, you can check out and you're going to wind up picking yourself off the canvas or getting hurt or something else. So part of that whole thing is a nurturing developmental stage process, if you will. And most of the world-class fighters have evolved along that pathway. I can't say enough. I am fortunate enough. I've had the greatest training regimen by some of the world's greatest trainers. And I'm very fortunate. And I took, for my own style, the best of what they had to show me. And cumulatively, I remembered and I was tutored underneath them. And they were great. And every time they showed me something that the light went off or clicked, I said, man, thank you for that. That's great. And, you executed. They love it. It's great. And they wouldn't say nothing. When you say thank you, they said, Sal, just remember what I showed you. And do me a favor one day. Pass that on to some other young fighter or something. And I never really understood why they would say something like that until you look at the crop of trainers and fighters today. Because a lot of those legacies or things have not been passed, or the baton has not really been passed on some level. Not just physically, but emotionally and mentally, how you evolve and develop as a fighter, a warrior, a combatant. And I'm going to say something here, too. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's also the mindset with the old way of promoting fighters, the old way of looking at the whole game of boxing. None of these masters were able to pass the baton to these, and no condescending, nothing negative, these new suits that step into a role. They, instead of having the whole foundation of how boxing has evolved or what it's about fundamentally in a purest level, they see, okay, we got to market him. We got to get an undefeated fighter. We got to put him against this. We got to do that. That's how we sell fights. That's how we market it. So I think you have the history of boxing and the legendary mindset and people that have built it on a promotional training managerial end and on the fighter's end. I think that baton has not been passed completely from generation to generation of fighters. That's my opinion.
Well, like I said, I just think that, I just think that they need to fight tougher fights. And in this particular case, I'm not knocking Hugo Ruiz, but think about it. They moved the kid up. He's been in some wars. They make him move up in weight to take on Davis. They're talking about Davis being a little more busy this year. Hopefully he will. It would be nice to see him in a big fight. Whether he's ready or not, we really don't know. But he certainly looked good last night. I love the guy, and I hope that he continues moving in the right direction. 2 minutes and 59 seconds was the exact time of the first round knockout. Tank Davis improves to 21-0. With 20 of his wins coming by knockout. Hugo Ruiz drops down to 39-5 with 33 knockouts. Says he's going back down in weight. Also on that card, Mario Barrios scored a fourth-round stoppage over Richard Zamora to improve to 23-0 with 15 knockouts. Zamora drops to 19-3. I thought the fight might have been stopped. I mean, Zamora was getting beat up, but 16 seconds into the fourth round, or 16 seconds left in the fourth round, I thought maybe he could have gone a little longer, but referee Ray Corona stopped it. You never can criticize a referee, even though I am, for stopping it too soon. It's much better than stopping it too late. Also, Javier Fortuna won a unanimous decision over Sharif Bogheri in the opening fight on that network. Fortuna improves to 34 wins, 2 losses, and a draw with 23 knockouts. Bogury drops his second fight of his career. He's 32-2 now. I believe that was his third, to be honest with you. I thought Bogury won the fight. And here's a case where, once again, we talk about this a lot. Fortuna, when he landed punches, they seemed to be the harder punches. But the first 3/4 of the fight was all Bogury. Now, Bogury kept getting warnings from the referee for hitting low. I didn't think he was hitting low. He was working the body, and none of them really, maybe one or two punches strayed below the belt, but for the most part, they were body shots. Bogury's problem is he's a bit wild. He charges in. You're always going to see blood in his fights, mostly his, because he headbutts by the way he charges in. But I thought Bogury squeaked out that fight. You didn't get to see that one, did you, Sal?
No, I did not. I'm sorry, I did not.
Well, we'll find you. We'll find you. Now you have to ship me some pizzas. That's the way it is. But
that's right.
Anyway, that broadcast was anticlimactic because it just, we were waiting for Tank Davis, and he takes care of his opponent at less than one round. The Barrios fight, he was in with an overmatched Zamora, and the Fortuna Bogury fight was interesting, but there could have been a little more action. Now, speak about action. If you caught the fights on the Zone Network, man, let me say this. I've been critical of the streaming services and everything, but the Zone is getting better. They had a solid broadcast last night, and they had some really good fights on. I mean, every one of these fights were competitive. And I know we've talked about this network, especially when you compare it to ESPN Plus and some of the other streaming services. And then, they go up against now the only cable network in Showtime. Fox is doing some boxing, and CBS got some boxing. But let me tell you, DAZN seems to be separating themselves from the pack. The main event was a clear indication of how you can equate DAZN to having decently matched fights. And this fight, the fan favorite, Alberto Machado, which was the super featherweight champ for the WBA, he was facing Andrew Cancio, and Cancio was a fighter who had announced his retirement and decided to give it one more shot. Great story. His two kids who were in the ring with him talked him into it. He was a fan favorite of his whole community. They all followed him to the fight in Fantasy Springs, and it was a fairy tale fight, Sal. I mean, what happened was Cancio got dropped in the first round, let me see, it was second round. I'm sorry, it was the first round. The second round, Cancio came back and seemingly won the round. And then the next thing you know, he just destroyed Machado, getting the fourth round knockout at 2 minutes and 16 seconds to win the title. Very emotional. The whole place seemed to be supportive of him. I mean, this is a situation where you get a guy, and when you look at Cancio, he's now his record is 20 wins, 4 losses, and 2 draws. The 4 losses all coming against quality opposition, and he seemed to get better. He took some time off, and then just figured he would give it his all, and it paid off. And Machado, an explosive fighter, no doubt. His nickname El Explosivo, but this guy has pop, and a tall fighter. Works with Freddie Roach. I mean, everything was going for him, except what I said earlier, Sal. When you start to look at his opposition, they're questionable. He gets in with a guy that was, no killer by definition, but a guy that worked really hard, came in shape, mentally and physically was prepared for this fight, and put a good old-fashioned behind-the-woodshed whooping on Machado. This is what I'm talking about with fighters fighting quality opposition, Sal.
Well, it's absolutely true. And Cancio, I mean, you made a comment. He regrouped. Maybe he needed some time off. Maybe he needed that maturity. Maybe he needed to come into his own. Maybe he needed to, there's a lot of the emotional maturity that goes along with a fighter's physical maturity too. And when you look at the old, it's so funny. Back then, if you were 30 years old, 32 years old, you were an old man in a fight game. You were done. Some fighters start later now. Some fighters, their professional career. And, some fighters, instead of peaking between 24 and 26, maybe they're peaking between 28, 34, something like that. Who knows? But it's a whole different thing. And I think with that maturity and peaking, not only is it the physical strength, but it's the emotional and mental strength. And, I think that's one of the major things that we saw that took place last night was the mental maturity and his arrival, if you will.
Well, Cancio broke him down, worked the body, just beat him up.
Yeah.
And, he took the body shots, went down, tried to get up, took another one, went down, tried to get up, and then it was over. Third time was a charm for Cancio. So congrats to him. I thought that I couldn't help but root for him, despite Machado being the guy that you're supposed to be keeping an eye on. Now, also on that card, Ray Vargas fought Franklin Manzanilla, and they were saying, and I could pronounce, I don't know why I can't this morning. Last night I was pronouncing it fine, Manzanilla. But anyway, now this was an example of a fight where you have two different styles. Ray Vargas, who hit the canvas in the second round, is the type of fighter who likes to use his height and reach advantage and box you and wear you down and then take you out. Manzanilla was a guy that fights. Vargas said he's a dirty fighter. He used all the parts of his body. He likes his shoulder, the elbows, the head, that kind of stuff. He's in there working the body. But this was, again, a fight, Sal. I know you didn't get a chance to see it, but this was a fight where you had a guy in Manzanilla who was so much smaller and was trying to do whatever he had to do to make it a rough and tumble fight. And he got several points taken away, which I thought were overkill. I think this fight would have been much closer should they not have taken those points. I think they were a little unjust with the points. Yes, he was a rough and tumble type style fighter, but I didn't think that they should have taken as many points away from him as they did. But nonetheless, Ray Vargas improved to 33-0, and Manzanilla drops to 18-5. It was a interesting fight, but I really thought the referee, the impact of him was too much in this one, Sal.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, we try to see the balance and how much is enough, and sometimes it's a shame, but it's more about it's all for me, but it is what it is. It's a fight.
Now, also on that card, there were a couple other fights. And like I said, I really enjoyed watching. I've seen the fights on DAZN before. Obviously, I subscribe. Not that, I'm forcing anyone else to. But, yes, I am a subscriber. And I was never really that impressed. But last night, the whole card seemed very solid to me. Not only fights, but the commentating and the video itself and the replays and the timing of it. And they didn't overbear you with all the other BS that Showtime does. But Jojo Diaz, coming off his first loss, he might have had a fight in between, but nonetheless, he fought Charles Hutada, who they're really close friends, and it certainly didn't look it in the fight. I mean, Jojo Diaz, I like this kid. The one problem I do see with him is that he doesn't really have a great defense, and he waits sometimes too long before he throws punches. He'll wait and wait and wait, and then all of a sudden he'll unleash some punches, And I think that's what, when he got his world title shot, I think that's what hurt him. He just wasn't busy enough. And despite being very close with Hurtado, he was busy, but at times you saw his weakness. But he dominated the fight, went the distance, 99-91. Another side note is that the fathers of both these fighters, Diaz and Hurtado, were both their main trainers in the corner, Sal. And you know how we're always talking that a lot of times father-son combos don't really work.
No, we talked about that. And there's been a whole reference of names of that kind of relationship that never really ends well for the fighter's career. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But the majority is it was never, the intent, but it just doesn't work out for a lot of reasons. I don't know. But anyway, you're right. That seemed to be something of an issue.
It's just my point is that it like you alluded to in the beginning, it just seems like it's hard for a father-son team to work in the sport of boxing because sometimes the father is overprotective or sometimes he's not protective enough, but both of these father-son teams seem to be working out well. Now, what they're talking about now is Cancio, who won the title from what's his name? Who I just said who lost his title to Machado. Now it looks like Jojo Diaz, who beat Cancio, might get a shot at him if he continues. I mean, who knows? Cancio might decide to retire as a champion. He was retired before. And they talked about Machado possibly moving up in weight, said he had a hard time, felt weak in there, and he might move up, which will open the door for Diaz against Cancio for a rematch. And I like it. If the version of Cancio shows up that showed up against Machado against Jojo Diaz, it ought to be a interesting fight. Another fight that was on that card, which again, I didn't think it went the right way. Adrian Estrella improved to 29-3 with 24 knockouts when he won a 10-round split decision over Oscar Duarte, who loses the first fight of his career. He drops to 15-1-1. The way the judges scored it, 97-93 for Duarte, and the other two judges had it 96-94. Well, one judge had it 96-94, and the other one had it 98-92 in favor of Estrella. Now, I could accept 96-94, but I thought Duarte won the fight. Estrella seemed to throw more punches that didn't have any effect, and a lot of them weren't landing flush. And Duarte, when he landed punches, they all seemed flush. I thought Duarte won the fight. What's your thoughts when a fighter wins a fight which seemingly, now I'm saying this from watching the fight from my living room, that seemingly the judges did not give credit to the defense of the fighter, and they gave more credit to the fighter that was just letting his hands go, not necessarily landing flush. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, and that's why we are so subject to human error or opinion when it comes to judging a fight. It goes back to the old adage ever since my first fight as an amateur. Well, does a busier fighter win because of aggression or because he's throwing and letting his hands fly? Or is the fighter that picks his shots, lands more accurate shots, has a little bit of defense? How it's subject to a lot of opinion, unfortunately. And, a defensive fighter that can pick his shots, that can avoid punches, it's graceful, it's great. Or a guy that's busier in his hands, it's all subject to human error and opinion, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just, I don't know.
I mean, I think there's a happy medium somewhere, and I like to see the art of boxing. I like to see defense. I like to see counter shots. I like to see clean punches land. And then, we all often say, well, does one good shot nullify 10 or 15 jabs that landed and other soft punches? And then you have the old thing. Well, why can't a boxer who could pick those shots outscore a puncher who's going to land some good solid shots? It really comes back to the old school of judging a fight subject to opinion, subject to whatever it may be on some level.
It's subjective. I mean, some judge might say, well, I'm scoring and judging this fight specifically on the amount of punches landed. And they're not putting the value in a power punch, which, I could see that. I just wish that there was a formula that said, okay, a guy that's throwing mosquito-like punches, how many of those equal one flush punch that sends you backwards? You know what I mean?
Been the question since the beginning. I know.
It's tough. Another fight on this card that I wanted to talk about, and I don't quite understand this fighter, and he's with one of the trainers I think is one of the most overrated trainers in the sport, in Andre Rozier. Torino Johnson. Now, if people remember, he had some great fights. Curtis Stevens. I mean, this guy's been in some great fights, and wars. I mean, he can take a punch. He delivers a punch. His defense isn't that great, but it seemed like he was lacking. Maybe a little fine tuning. Maybe he was a little wild. Well, he stepped in the ring last night with Fernando Castaneda. And going into the fight, Castaneda was 26 wins and 13 losses. Torino Johnson was 20 wins and 2 losses. And his last scheduled fight was supposed to take place on an undercard as a co-main event against David Lemieux. And Lemieux backed out of the fight, and they ended up not having the fight. He came in overweight. That was what really happened, and they canceled the fight. So Johnson was a little bummed out because a win over David Lemieux would have really catapulted his career. So they get him a fight a month or so later against Castaneda, and he just seemed like he wasn't there mentally or physically. Well, the fight turned into a brawl, and Castaneda did pretty well in this fight, well enough to maybe squeak out the win. I mean, Johnson landed shots, took a lot of shots. Castaneda landed a lot of body shots, Sal. Something else that I'm not so sure that a lot of judges score. And at the end of the fight, one judge scored at 77-75 for Johnson. One judge scored at 77-75 for Fernando Castaneda. And what do you suppose the third judge scored it for, Sal Rocky Sanicola?
76-76.
You got it, my man. Scored at 76 to make the fight a draw. And the way the draw worked out, so now Johnson 20 wins, 2 losses, a draw. Castaneda 26 wins, 13 losses, and a draw. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess it was a close enough fight where I don't disagree, and the scores weren't outrageous either. 77-75 are close. Yeah, so I mean, so you got a score card that you can't argue with, whether you thought Johnson squeaked it out at 77-75 or Castaneda squeaked it out at 77-75. At the end of the night, I thought it was a very entertaining fight. I said to myself, Billy C, because when I talk to myself, I do refer to myself. I say Billy C, but the truth of the matter is, as much as I like Torino Johnson, he's got to do something. I think that he's got to tighten up his defense, and he's got such a granite chin. He was rocked a couple of times. I was surprised he didn't go down. I want to see him improve, Sal. I just haven't seen this guy. Yeah, since the Curtis Stevens fight, which was an all-out war, which he dominated this whole fight. I mean, he was battering Stevens the whole time. And at the end, they waved it off. He was against the ropes. He was pulling the bobblehead reenactment of his neck against the ropes, and they waved off the fight, which I thought he deserved Hey, he's the ropes are holding him up. Give him an 8 count. I thought he deserved that after dominating for the whole 11 rounds. But this fight, he looks like a shell of himself. Maybe he took a beating in that fight. I don't know, but I'd like to see him improve. Do you have any thoughts on Johnson? Looks like we. Are you still there, Sal? Looks like I might have lost Sal. So we'll try and get him back here in a sec. But I just think that this kid is better than he's displaying. That's all. I'd like to see him do a lot better. I think we got you back. Are you back, Sal?
I'm back, buddy. I'm back.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened.
I was spoken.
Yeah. So what were you? What's your thoughts on Torino Johnson? I mean, he needs some improvement, don't you think? It looks like I lost Sal again. Sal's having some poor connection, so we'll wait for him to. We'll try and get him back on. But in any event, I've always liked Torino Johnson, and I hope that he can come back a little better. Hey, listen, I got a trivia question, and I want to give away a copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game. I really this is one that's a winnable prize, winnable question. We've been doing our show now for 15 years, but my question is, where did we broadcast our very first show? Where did we broadcast from in our very first show? Now, I've talked about this many times, and anybody that's been listening or watching this show for any length of time will know that answer, I think. So if you're the first one, I'll tell you what, even if you're the first or second, I might give away 2 copies. So if you know the answer, drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. Where did we broadcast our very first show? Now, you got to go back a long time, but I'm curious to know how many of you guys know that answer. But some other news I wanted to talk about, and Mitch was kidding me a little bit. But speaking of kidding me, back again with us is my man Sal Rocky Senecola. What happened, buddy? What do you?
Hey man, I was talking, and all of a sudden I couldn't hear you, and all of a sudden you couldn't hear me, and then we got dropped.
Yeah. So yeah. Well. So what? You never did give us your thoughts on Torino Johnson.
Well, I think that he's got some good skill, and we're going to see him again and things, and we'll see what happens. It's a fighting. I wanted to say earlier, Bill. I got an email from our dear friend Henry Haskell, and the passing of Rocky Lockridge was this week or so.
Yeah, no, it was a couple of days ago. When I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh.
And it brought back so many instant memories, because Rocky Lockridge, he was the first pro I ever really sparred, and I remember when he was with Lou Duva, main events in the early days. We went up to a gym, one of Lou Duva's gyms. I don't know, it was on Elefante Avenue or whatever the heck in Patterson. It wasn't the Squirrelwood Road West Patterson gym. It was a bit earlier than that. I think I just won the Golden Gloves. I was 17 or 18, and not even 18. And I was sparring Rocky. He wasn't the title holder yet, but he was a hell of a fighter. And through the years, when he was a champion, we were always together sparring. When we had the gym on Squirrelwood Road, when Lou Duva and Main Events had the training camps up in the old Americana Resort, which was Vernon Valley Great Gorge, and Rocky was such a health nut at that time, and he would mentor me, and we had a good friendship. And I remember He said one time, we were talking earlier, you and I, about the things with the training and the passing on and everything else. And he would say something so profound one day. He said, Sal, trouble with boxing or fighting is by the time we learn everything we need to learn, it's time to retire. And I thought it was so profound that he said that, but he was already a champion and everything else. And I'll tell you, there were so many incidents, so many things with his running regimen, his training regimen. He would be such a health nut at that time. He turned me on. He would go to the health food store. They had this BioStrat, this little liquid you drag in a glass tube to help oxygenate your blood. So I mean, this guy was really ahead of his time in that early age of the late 70s, early 80s, developing and just looking at, training, developing, and fighting. But anyway, I just want to say that the passing of Rocky Lockridge, he was a great warrior, and my condolences to his family.
I'm with you, and I'm glad you brought that up. It was sad to see the tough times that he fell on, and then of course,
gosh, devastating. It's sad. How do you get a world class fighter that had a great career, a great run, fought for a lot of money, and basically destitute, homeless, and on the streets, and to some degree, in the last couple of his years in and out of hospitals, and it's just a real shame. And surely he wasn't more than 60, 63 years old.
Some other news. My man Mitch pointed it out to me earlier in the week, but we had talked about Michael second to none, whose multiple reports are saying that he got out of jail. Now he's 55 years old, and I don't know if the rumors were true. I think Mitch was pulling my leg, but rumors that he might try a comeback. But we'll see what happens. I hope not. The thing is, the thing with Michael Nunn that always bothered me was that Michael Nunn was one of the most talented fighters of his era. He really was. He was very fun to watch and everything else. And he got busted for drugs, for cocaine. And he was sentenced to 24 years in jail. Now, listen. Before I give my opinion here, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that it's okay to go out there and deal with drugs, especially on the level that he was, found guilty of. But I think when you look at that kind of a sentence, unless there was a death involved, I think it's extreme. And the only reason why I say that is because when you look at some of these, like recently, somewhat locally, where we broadcast the show from, there was a murder, okay? And it was a vicious, brutal murder, decapitation, if you will. It wasn't a murder one charge, it was a murder two. It was two guys actually fighting over a girl. And they find. I know that never happens, right? And the thing is that the guy who was found guilty got charged with 20 years. He got sentenced to 20 years, but he elected to not be eligible for parole, so he's going to do 20, and then he's a free man. How can a guy be sentenced to 20 years for killing someone? And a guy that's involved with the distribution of cocaine, which don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's good or bad or anything. It's definitely not good, but served the same sentence. To me, that just seems out of whack, Sal.
Well, again, you're talking about an area that's very sensitive and very but not a boilerplate. You look at what was his distribution. Was it to kids? Was it to this and that? How many lives is he going to ruin passing out cocaine or distributing cocaine? How many lives are going to equal or come to a person deceased or something else? Or, it's so many levels. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. Certainly not. That's why, you watch your P's and Q's. You have a life. You live accountable, and you just do what you can do not to wind up in either of those positions.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's I know what you're saying.
Listen, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying that
No,
you should have got a slap on the wrist. I'm
no,
not.
no, because there's a lot of cases where you do. But like I said, how do you? Hey, guess what? It also has a lot to do with who's your legal team. Who can you afford? Who helped you there? What? Hey, you never know. You never know what judge has the case that's touched him in the heart or home or anything else, or maybe make an example of. Maybe he was made an example of for a certain reason. I never really followed that whole incident, so I'm totally just talking off the cuff right now.
Well, it was 20 years ago, and he got sentenced to 24 years, and he's finally, from what I understand, out. So hopefully he could just do what he's got to do. But in any event, it just has always and coaches in the chat room saying, good thing Pacquiao's not the president. Well, I know that Filipino president over there, what a nutcase. You get caught with a joint on you and you're facing a firing squad.
Hey, guess what? Maybe that's the extreme that'll really deter some of the bad, but that is a little extreme.
I mean, that's a little extreme, especially when you could go to California and sit in a shop and smoke your brains out, and many other states as well now. Michael, second to none. I'm glad he's going to be out, and hopefully he can put that behind him and do all the right things now for the remainder of his life. 55 years old, from what I understand. So we'll see what happens. But in any event, what, you raising your hand?
Well, I'm just gonna say, Bill, I think I broke the barrier with my comeback at age 53. That opened up the floodgates, and now you have a lot of fighters in their 50s thinking they can make a comeback. And which reminds me, my shoulder I think is better, even though it's not allowed to be. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I think I think you're going to find more and more fighters wanting to make a comeback. I mean, you saw it with some good fighters, world class former champions, wanting to express that they could fight into their 50s, and it's not the first one, and we're not going to see it as the last one. So maybe Michael Nunn will want to make a comeback. Who knows?
Well, I don't know, man. I just think I don't get me started on that. But
I know.
Anyway, we got a couple of emails I wanted to get to, and we'll be taking a break here in a little bit. But this one's from actually, I think I got two from Jesse. He says, "Hey guys, talking about the fights last week." He says, "I saw the fights of Comey last week. A good win, but he gets wild at times. Nonetheless, congrats. Now he looks like he's going to face Lomachenko next. Should be interesting, but Lomachenko will pick him apart." We were talking about that last week, Sal. Richard Comey wins a great fight, and they're like, "Oh, you finally got your title. Oh, you win the fight. Now you get to fight Lomachenko." And it's like, ooh, geez. Yeah. So Lomachenko obviously going to be criticized, but Richard Comey looked good. Again, Andre Rozier was his trainer last week. But anyway, he says, as for Kovalev, good win. He wants to see Kovalev against Marcus Brown or Yarde or Barrera or Bivol. Smith winner. Next fight versus one of those opponents. I'm with you. I don't know what to think of Kovalev. He fights Barrera. Do we get another fight? A try the what did I call that with the third
trilogy?
Fight? No, not really a trilogy. The one wins one wins another.
Rubber match.
Right.
Rubber match.
Thank you. I lost my train of thought. It's getting bad. I think
getting old, man.
I might be getting old. Right. The rubber match. Which what do you think about that? Do you think that Kovalev would be smart to take a rubber match against Barrera? You think there's some value in that for him financially? You think he should go for the Bivol Joe Smith Jr. Winner, or Marcus Brown? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Well, if he can get a rubber match, if they're going to be showing him the dollars and everything else, why not? Each fighter had their moment to beat the other. So, let's see who can do the better job and be the victor of a trifecta, not trifecta, trifecta.
Yeah, I got you.
I like that. I invented that.
I know you shouldn't have really. Sometimes you should just keep going and don't draw attention to it, because
that was one of the times. Thank you very much.
That was one of the times you should have let it go. But I don't know, man. A rubber match might be a smart bet for him, because if he wins again, maybe that creates. Then Bivol fights Smith, which is next week or the week after. A week after, I think. Or no, actually, that fight's March 9th. The winner of that fight against the winner of the rubber match between Barrera and Kovalev, that might be interesting, Sal.
I think it would be a good fight, and like I said, I think. Rubber matches. Look at the great rubber matches we've had in the past that really resonate and are memorable, and they're good fights. And I'll be the first to say, I pretty much had Kovalev off the radar. I thought he was done. After that first fight, with Barrera. But like I said, I'd like to see maybe one more time they get in the ring and see what happens. I mean, they each have something to prove, and to be dominant, and to be the one to come out with the 2 out of 3. So we'll see. I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I think for Kovalev, and the fact that he's working with a new trainer, and the fact that he came out with a different style for this fight against Sullivan Barrera that he won, I think it would be smart for him to fight Barrera again and see if he can do it again, or see if he can do it the same way and then this time get a knockout, or vice versa, Barrera showing that, he made a couple of mistakes and basically let Kovalev beat him via a decision. So, I think I would be interested in that fight.
Yeah, and like we said, they each are familiar with each other, so they're going to take what they need to do to go back to school and in their minds and their hearts, and say, hey, well, he got the best of me. He was busier. How do I nullify that? Or Kovalev, I still think, has to watch out for Barrera's power, because I thought Kovalev got hit with 1 or 2, but it wasn't that bad, and he was able to weather it. And, still do enough to keep his hands busy, and that's why Kovalev won. He was a busier fighter. He outboxed. He had some defense. He took the fight to him. I mean, Kovalev fought an optimal fight for himself, and that's why he got the victory.
Listen, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'll finish the emails from Jesse, and we'll talk about some other interesting news and a little more on Tank Davis's victory over Hugo Ruiz last night. Not so much last night. Not so much the fight itself, since it didn't last 3 minutes, but maybe some thought on where Davis will go from here. Hopefully it won't be another 3-minute fight. But, hey, listen, don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back in about 2.
Billy C will be right back.
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system break down bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people. Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
You save a lot of money. It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt, the innovative technology to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace? Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you!
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Glad that you could be with us. Hey, first and foremost, I just want to apologize. I was confusing Sullivan Barrera with Eldir Alvarez, who had beaten Kovalev for the title, and then Kovalev just recently won the title back. So the rubber match would have been against Alvarez. Sal, I'm surprised you didn't catch me with my error. I know you knew. You were just trying to play along, weren't you?
I was just trying to
play along. I appreciate it, Sal. I appreciate it. Not, you trying to protect me and all. Whoa! What's this mug? You cheating on me? Where's the other mug?
No. It's sorry. I.
You sound like Ricky Ricardo. But all right. So there some more of the email here with Jesse. He says Teofimo. He's talking about Teofimo Lopez is good, but I think he's the next Broner. He's getting too big-headed. Who had the better talent at the same age, Billy? I think Teo throws more punches and he's more accurate and is more versatile. Teo versus Pedraza, Robert Easter Jr., Tago, Burns, Gamboa, Dord, Jordan, Bay, Lundy, Gesta, Mendy. Any of those next, he says, or are those too experienced for him? I don't think Top Rank gives him those fighters just yet. They would feed him a Menard and a Dago type fighters who are almost done with their careers. Teofimo Lopez is a talented fighter. And, that's the problem with a lot of these young fighters getting too big-headed, believing the press clippings, if you will, listening to all the guys in their ears that are basically whispering in their ears and then taking the cash out of their back pockets when they're, listening to all the stroking that's going on. This is why I think it's all related, Sal. Like, if you move a fighter correctly and you increase his level of opposition and you force the fighter to stay focused on training and getting better and learning from mistakes, all those other things don't happen because it's just not enough time, not enough focus, not enough effort on a fighter to get mixed up and lost in a lot of, for no other intent and purposes, hype that surrounds them and their success. I think when you look, even if you take a guy like Mike Tyson, in the beginning of his career when he was busy and fighting and all these guys, he had his nose clean. Then all of a sudden, once he got to a certain level and, you're the baddest on the planet, all of that stuff, and the activity level slowed down, well, that's when all the shenanigans started with him. So I think the safest bet is to stay busy and make sure you're, increasing your level of opposition so you can get better and stay focused. What's your thoughts?
That's exactly it, Bill. It doesn't take much. Like I said, I'll never forget the conversation, and I've said it many times. Chicky Ferrara had with me. We just finished training at Gleason's gym. We went around to the Blarney Stone. We sat, we had a lunch, and we talked. And he said, Sal, this is what it's going to take. You got a few short years. You're going to be devoting. You got to eat, sleep, drink, boxing, put the blinders on. Don't let anything else interfere with you. It's just a few short years of your life. But those years are going to carry you for the rest of your life. And if you do the right stuff, do the right thing. And a lot of times that's forgotten. A lot of times it's too much to ask in today's world. I don't know. Just to put the blinders on, say, hey, for next 6 to 8 years or whatever I can do, I'm going to block out. I'm going to do what I got to do to eat, sleep, drink, boxing, learn my craft, do this, do my homework, train mentally, physically, prepare myself, go to war, do what I got to do, rest, heal. It's easier said than done, is what I'm saying.
Well, when you don't have, when we look at guys like Adrian Broner, who I thought was extremely talented and then let, outside the ring influences start to dictate his career. And we all saw what happened to him. Tank Davis is his best buddy. We've seen some crazy stuff from those two when they're out on the town. So we hope Tank doesn't do it. Teofimo, he's a quality fighter. Everybody starts patting him on the back. It's easy to get caught up in that, and you're right. I mean, the best thing that they could do is stay in the gym and just, in today's world, it's so much harder to block out everything. I mean, think about what it was like in the 20s, 30s, and 40s when, the newspaper was the only way you could hear about a fight. And sometimes you would hear about it days later. Then in the 50s and 60s, we got to see it on TV. 70s it got a little more closer to us. And then by the time the 80s came around, information was flying a little more freely, but nothing like today. I mean, today it's instant. There's no need for newspaper beat writers on boxing anymore because, instantaneously stuff is being spread out worldwide, by the way. And I couldn't help but notice several of the events I was watching last night, all of the people filming it with their phones. You used to, in the 80s and 90s, you used to go to an arena and the first thing, there's no filming of any kind of this event, blah, blah, blah. You were frisked. You couldn't go in with a camera. Now, what are they going to do? They can't take your phone away from you. So everybody's got footage. So it's a crazy mixed up world we live in.
And they could upload it, put it to YouTube, could put it to MyTube, whatever you want.
Yeah. Anyway, he says, Valdez did show me some more patience, and he was picking his shots better, but still not much head movement. Needs to use his jab more. He says, Valdez against Salby, Galahad, Warrington. Do you think they'll give him another previous opponent. I'm not sure. Valdez, I like Oscar Valdez. The jaw, the breaking of his jaw, and then coming back and excuse me. Oh, geez, Sal. The breaking of his jaw, and then him coming back. After that, I think we'll have to give him another fight. Let's see. Hopefully, he does move his head a little more, and we could go from there. He says, lastly, how is the Leonard Tyner fight made when Isaac Jones only has 7 fights? Tyner was a big prospect at one time. I'm not so sure he is anymore. And Jones, we'll see. That we'll learn about that soon. The result in that, I should say. He says, my picks for this week. Let's see how he did. He says Tank knocks out Ruiz in 5. Well, you got the knockout right, but it only took 1. He says Erickson Lubin, unanimous decision over Smith in a boring fight. Fortuna, check this out. Fortuna split decision over Bogery. It was a unanimous decision, but it should have been. He says Mario Barrios, unanimous decision over Zamora. Barrios knocked him out. Machado knocking out TKO 8th round knockout, which did not happen. Machado lost to Cancio. Jojo, unanimous decision over Herta in a close fight. It was a unanimous decision, was not close. And he said Oscar Duarte over Estrella. You missed that one too, but I thought he won the fight. So for all intent purposes, I think Jesse did pretty well with his picks, Sal.
I think he did. I want to ask him the lottery numbers for this week.
They're saying in one of the chat rooms that Sal needs a cough button. Yeah, he should have given me. He should have a cough button. He should.
It's crazy. Bill. I'm in this production, this musical play. I got to sing every night and everything else. And we opened last night, and I've been fighting. Everybody's sick on the island. Everybody, not everybody, but my staff. Everybody in the play, it's crazy. And so guess what? I guess I'm not infallible. The other day I started coming down with that little bit of cough, a little sore throat, a little bit of this. I'm fatigued, and that's why I'm a little off today. But, and I got to get this throat ready because we got to perform today at 3 o'clock.
Viva la. I could just see you in there. But anyway, hey, I got some news. How about this? How about Canelo Alvarez? Now, you know that I can't stand Mario Ronaldo. You know that. Well, I've mentioned that to you, right?
I give him a pass.
Yeah, well, I'm not giving him any passes. I don't care about his mental state, but he said something last night that I had to laugh, and I don't remember word for word, but basically he was criticizing the WBA, the way they hand out titles. He says, which is true. The WBA has no scruples. Well, check this out. They announced the other day that they are going to let Saul Canelo Alvarez keep both titles, the WBA middleweight title and his newly won super middleweight title. The last person that they let do that, guess who that was?
I'm going to guess. It's a long one. But I'm going to guess it was Floyd Mayweather.
You're right. It was Floyd Mayweather. You were right.
I got this right. I got this right. Oh, my God.
So I ask you this. Is it as blatant to you as it is as blatant to me that the WBA aligns themselves with a name and all their rules just get thrown out? Now, they do have a rule where they say they can do that, but what a joke. So Canelo is basically going to get his fight with Daniel Jacobs, and basically when he leaves that arena, win, lose, or draw, he's still going to be a world champion.
Well, it is what it is. That's what I'm saying. It's a different game today. It's a much different game today.
Well, listen, they had did away with simultaneously most, legitimate sanctioning bodies did away with that years and years ago. And you're allowed to compete for another belt, but you have X amount of time to choose one. And for them letting him maintain both is blatant favoritism, in my opinion. And again, I just think that it's so unfair to fighters that are working their butts off in the gym trying to get legitimate shots, and the way you got these so-called champions being coddled and protected and being in the back pockets of the sanctioning bodies and everything else. It's, I wonder why the sport isn't as popular as it used to be, Sal.
Well, you and I can go through a whole list, and it's going to be more than 10 reasons.
My point is, these are several of them right here.
I know. Well, that's the whole thing.
And here's another shocking bit of news about your boy Canelo.
There's more?
There's more. Because Canelo Alvarez and Daniel Jacobs, they announced where it's going to be taking place the weekend of Cinco de Mayo, their fight, and because they made it seem like it could have been any place for weekend Cinco de Mayo. But they finally announced officially where Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Daniel Jacobs will be. Where do you suppose the fight will take place?
Well, I'm not going to be 3 for 3. I was going to say either Vegas, Texas, or California.
Vegas. It was Vegas. Where else would it be? Because that gutless, spineless piece of garbage, Bob Bennett from the Nevada State Athletic Commission, he favors Canelo no matter what, just like he favors Mayweather. I mean, could it have become? And in the 80s and 90s, New York was considered, and actually way before that, was considered a corrupt. I know it's shocking, but New York was considered a corrupt boxing commission. And that's why a lot of the fights ended up going out to Vegas, and then Vegas became, for all intent purposes, the boxing capital of the world, in my opinion. But in this last 10 years, I mean, the most controversial things have taken place in the city of Las Vegas, the state of Nevada. And I just, at this point, to me, Sal, it looks like they blatantly do whatever the hell they want, and the sport goes on its merry way. I mean, if anybody really wanted to fix it, they would avoid Vegas. There's other options.
There are, but, that's the whole thing, Bill. There's so many concessions being made. There's so many things happening, and Vegas is a fight mecca of the world, one of the top venues, and just like the Garden was, just like California is, just like the Barclay, this one, that one. There's some top venues, and Vegas will always remain as a top venue.
Well,
it just draws.
Yeah. I mean, I love boxing in Vegas. Don't get me wrong. But the thing is that, in Vegas, they do have the big arena where Canelo Jacobs is going to be at the T-Mobile Arena, and in New York we have Madison Square Garden, what have you, in Brooklyn, the Barclays Center. But at the end of the day, Sal, does it really matter the size of the venue here in the States anyway with TV? We're not talking about Anthony Joshua selling 90,000 seats in a soccer stadium, because no boxer here in the U.S. does that. Let's be real. Floyd Mayweather may sell 1 million pay-per-views, but he doesn't even sell out arenas. I mean, he fights in 15,000-seat arenas where there's still seats available. So it's a different type of crowd. Between, in the sport of boxing for Europe and the U.S. The U.S., we have a tendency to prefer to watch it, from our living rooms. So fighters can make more money. So with that said, why aren't they, finding easier to control venues for the broadcasts, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know. I'm just, if I had a fighter, and I do work with several, and I had a big fight, and I was calling the shots. Now, if you're getting your shot and you have to go to the champion's backyard, that's one thing. But if you're making a decision to do a defense or what have you, I would definitely not consider Las Vegas, only because of the corruption within that commission, Sal.
Well, again, you don't know what everything is on the table that lures people to there. Like I said, there's concessions, there's here, there's there. Some people just also just love that whole mindset, and that once you're in Vegas, you've arrived. It's like the old Madison Square Garden, mentality mindset. You want to fight in the Garden, you want to fight in Vegas. Those are the fight capitals of the world for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, well, she's a changing, but in any event,
Time to change.
before we talk a little about the fights next week, I wanted to just give our final thoughts on the two big fights this week, which was Gervonta Tank Davis's victory over Hugo Ruiz, and the Andrew Cancio upset of sorts over Alberto Machado. We'll start off with Tank Davis. This kid shows all the talent, Sal, and we talked
Agreed.
about his lack of activity last year. We talked about his signing, or we didn't talk about it today, but when he signed with Mayweather Promotions, he gets his first title defense, and he loses his belt on the scale. So you got to question his dedication. Then in the press for almost a year, we hear the negativity, the not so great relationship between Floyd of Mayweather Promotions, Floyd Mayweather Jr., and Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis went as far in one of those interviews as saying, "I'll sit it out till my contract expires." Then we see Floyd, which incidentally, who dressed him? He looked like an action figure. He had these girly boots on with these girly pants. I mean, for a guy who thinks he's so bad, and he's not. Unless you're a woman, he'll beat the hell out of you. But who picked his outfit yesterday? I mean, geez, he looked terrible. But I guess who cares? He says to himself, "I'll look any way I want." I think Tank Davis needs to get back in the ring quickly. I think he needs to use his destruction over Hugo Ruiz as a catapult, Sal. And the only way to do that is to get right back in the ring. And even if he takes on a less than stellar opponent, if he does it again in a couple of rounds, then he's going to have this persona of being a destroyer. I'm not suggesting he's not, but it'll build up value on his own. What he can't do, Sal, is wait several months, 6 months, 4 months to get in the ring again, especially after a fight that didn't get out of the first round.
No, you're absolutely right, Bill. And this would be, for all intents and purposes, he's ready to go next month on some level. He certainly, needs a couple days off, and because he's peaked. He peaked last night. He was excellent. He destroyed his opponent in less than one round. But he's fully prepared to fight in a couple of weeks to re-peak and bring it up and fight, anybody. He can fight anybody. I think it's to his benefit that he keeps with the busy program and has the continuity where he's not going to be as idle as he once was. I think he should keep as active as he can right now because these are his years. And I think that he'll have a lot of great performances in the ring this year if he continues on the right track.
Tank Davis has the tools.
He does.
He's got all the tools to be an all-time great. The worst thing that he could do right now is follow, and this is such a catch-22 statement. I know I'm going to be criticized. Floyd Mayweather was very successful with his blueprint. No one can deny it. He's made a lot of money. There's a whole generation of people that actually think that he was the best. So he was successful. It is what it is. But a lot of times when something like that happens, it's only for that person to duplicate that, which everyone will try to do because of Floyd's success. Most of the time doesn't work out. Most of the time, it just doesn't work out. You know, and you look at other sports. You take, an all-star quarterback, and you give him all his weapons, and you sell everybody that's the system that you can put another quarterback in place. Well, sometimes you can. They take another guy and he's got all his weapons and they run the same system and they equal the same success. But in most cases, it doesn't work out that way. And I think it's the same case in boxing. I think Gervonta Davis at some point needs to recognize that Gervonta Davis is Gervonta Davis. And whether he stays with Mayweather or not, and I'm not, I've always thought that Mayweather should actually focus on his promotional company because we need an American-based promotional company to rival Golden Boy and Top Rank, and Floyd's Mayweather Promotions could very well be that team. But you can't have all your blue-chip fighters follow the plan that worked for Floyd. And in Gervonta Davis's case, this is a kid that I would love. I mean, if he was my fighter, I would love to see how far he could go. Now, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be banging down the door of Vasily Lomachenko for a fight tomorrow, but I would definitely be stepping up my level of opposition. I would want a tough fight that's winnable so that it could get the discussion at the water cooler, as you suggested when we opened the show today. The discussion that's going to be around the water cooler, if there's any, would be how he demolished this guy. And in a sense, it happened so quick that it could be counterproductive with interest, Sal. Some people might just say, he didn't fight a tough enough guy and lose interest. That's always a possibility too, don't you think? Always
a possibility. That's why, there's some fickle people out there. They love you, they hate you. You can't please everybody. They'll damn you if you do, damn you if you don't. And you just gotta keep going, plugging along, and doing the best you can. And fighters by nature, they want to be accepted. They feel that they work hard. They love to be a boxing celebrity. They love the pats on the back. For the most part, and they like the attention, and they like to promote themselves. And it's just a natural progression. And I think he's in a position right now, and where he's got a great next couple of years that he could really shine. And maybe he'll be one of the legendary few that we could talk about 10, 20 years from now that is going to fit in the mold of the yesterday heroes.
Well, what's the most important thing that will etch a fighter in the stone of boxing history? What's the most important ingredient that fighter needs to solidify his place in history, Sal?
Tough fights. Legendary fights.
Exactly. And what I was going to say is the right dance partner.
Right dance.
Sugar Ray Leonard had several.
Yes,
Duran and Marvin Hagler, etc. Tommy Hearns, of course. All of those guys had several dance partners. Ali, when you think of Ali, the first name that comes to most people's minds are Joe Frazier. Even one of my favorite fighters, Jack Dempsey. You think of Gene Tunney. So many fighters that are. What's that?
Firpo. Knocked him out of the ring, Firpo.
No, Luis Firpo. Yeah, that fight was one of the most. And Firpo, I just read an article written by a local sports guy that I never realized. As much as I know about Jack Dempsey, I never realized that even after that fight, when Firpo went back to Argentina, he was a hero. He was a hero for knocking Dempsey through the ropes out onto where the newspaper guys lifted him back in. I mean, just all these great fights historically. Yeah. There was always a dance part. I mean, look at Mickey Ward and Arturo Gotti. I mean, these two guys, had each other. I mean, that's what Tank Davis needs. Tank Davis needs that opponent. And that's something that Floyd never had. Let's be real. He had the opportunity to do it with Manny Pacquiao. they could have been the dance partners. But because Floyd, doesn't want to risk anything, because Floyd just only wants layup fights, he never let that happen. Yes, we got one fight, but it was way too late. And who knows, we may get another that may, make what I'm saying null and void. But, great fighters from a historical perspective need great dance partners. And you know what? Tank Davis, his dance partner, could very well be Vasily Lomachenko. Could be the guy. I'm not saying that Tank is ready for him right now, but remember something. Lomachenko's no spring chicken. He's fought all those amateur fights, so maybe a fight with Lomachenko towards the end of this year, build himself to that point, could be the dance partner that etches Tank Davis forever in boxing history. I mean, what do you think?
I think you're 100% right, and that could be the right dance partner. And there's probably a few other ones out there, but Lomachenko would definitely be one that, win, lose, or draw, you're going to have a rematch. And, the legends are built from rubber matches, from fights that go ebb and flow here and there. I mean, it's a shame, Floyd could have etched even more. It's a shame there was never a rematch against Oscar De La Hoya, which might have, if Oscar won the rematch, would have resulted also in a rubber match.
Listen, I salivate. I drool. Yeah.
Salivate.
Yeah, that's the word. You said that even with a sneezing nose. That's good. I drool over the potential fight between Vasily Lomachenko and Tank Davis. Tank Davis has that hand speed and that accuracy. He doesn't have the defense. So it would be interesting to see how Lomachenko could use his ring generalship, not to be confused with ringmanship, in a fight with a guy that's young and fast and accurate as Tank, and then I would love to see if Tank could make adjustments. You see, what happens with these young fighters, boys and girls, is when they're not challenged and they're not tested, they don't get better. And I don't want to see that happen to Tank Davis. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see another fighter get ruined by Floyd Mayweather. Tank Davis, I love him, but no disrespect, he doesn't seem like he's the sharpest tool in the shed, Sal. It seems like he could be manipulated pretty easily. And I don't know. If I'm Tank Davis, I want to prove that I'm the best. I don't just want to beat up on punching bags. What do you think?
No, I believe that about Tank. I do. I think that Gervonta is the kind of warrior that he wants to prove to himself, and he wants to prove to everybody that he's the best, and he's not afraid of anybody. I believe that about him. And, whether his promotional outfit or other people have the same thought or feel he's ready, we can very well see a fight between he and Lomachenko before the end of the year. You don't know.
Well, it would be nice if we did. The other fight I wanted to touch on again clearly was the upset. They call it an upset, but Andrew Cancio knocking out Alberto Machado at 2 minutes and 16 seconds of the fourth round. This was a guy that had all kinds of backstory around him. He was brought in as a tough opponent for Alberto Machado. Freddie Roach, yucking it up, saying that this fight won't last long. He's gonna be taken out of there probably within 5. This is what he was saying about Machado taking out Cancio, and he was right. The fight ended before 5, except unfortunately for Freddie Roach, it was his guy that got taken out. Machado's most likely going to move up in weight, but how can you not support Cancio with the story? Retired, took time off to train, has to go back to work tomorrow, works in what did he work in? He worked in some kind of a digging something. It's not an easy job, maybe doing road work or something like that. So between that and his kids, comes out with being a world champion, Who knows what's going to happen with Cancio? We've said this many times on this show, Sal. Sometimes when a fighter gets that belt, or gets a belt, we should say, a world strap, we should say, anyway, becomes better. And it makes me wonder, does a guy like Cancio, did he just, win a good fight? He got his title. He got some money. Should he continue? Should he walk away as a champ? It makes you wonder. He's got 2 young kids, a boy and a girl that were ringside with him. Does he want to take any risks? He seemed like he was had all his faculties. He's still a young man. A lot of decisions to make, but it was certainly an exciting fight, and I love when the underdog wins.
Well, of course you do, and I do too, because that's just compounds the whole fight mindset, mentality. Don't discount anybody. Don't discount an underdog. Don't discount any value in a fighter, and let the best man win. And the best man that night is usually the guy that has his hand raised, Billy.
As the winner?
Yes.
Yeah, imagine that.
I just did.
I think they're talking about it, and it looks like Cancio will get Jojo Diaz as his next fight. They were talking about that last night. I don't know if Jojo Diaz's victory got him a title shot against the winner of Machado, Cancio. He had already beaten Cancio, and you say to yourself, what is a guy? I was just saying, what does a guy like Cancio do? Does he walk away as a champ? That's one of the things that fighters always forget. You walk away as a champ, you're always a champ. People will remember that last great Rocky-esque type performance that he did to win the title. I mean, it's it goes down in infamy. Or does he come back and try to get that big payday? And it would go against a Jojo Diaz. Can he muster up the same drive and determination that he obviously mustered up to fight Machado for a defense of that belt and then hang it up? I mean, either way, a guy that retired and came back, you have to assume that, he's not going to look at this as a rejuvenation of a career and then, be in boxing now for another 5 years. I would think it would be the opposite for him, but I don't know. I think, you would have to entertain what kind of dollars you could make by making a defense, but then, you'd also have to say to yourself, well, what do I got to put into this to maintain where I am? I want the same. If the same version, Andrew Cancio that beat Alberto Machado last night steps in the ring with the same version of Jojo Diaz that beat Huerta last night, that's one hell of a fight, Sal. And it's a risky fight. I'm not sure what Cancio wants. I know he would like a big payday, and would a fight against Jojo Diaz really get him the kind of payday that would justify risking walking away as a one-time champion?
Well, it's so true. Now, how old is Cancio?
He's I don't think he's old per se. I mean, I think he's 30 something, but not like 38, but still, he's coming out of retirement. He was off for almost 2 years.
Wow. Well, if he's going to want to do something, like you suggested, maybe one big payday or several little ones or smaller ones or maybe multiple big ones. He's got to keep busy, especially at that age. He's got to be back in the ring before 4 months, I think, for this year. And, if he can get the kind of opponent that he can have a great big payday or so, why not? And we'll see. But, that 33 1/3 and 10% taxes it helps that money shrink real fast.
This is the type of manager that I am with fighters. If I know a fighter personally, which I get to know all my fighters personally, and the situation with Cancio, if he was my fighter, and when I saw last night the popularity that he has in that town, and the support that he had from all those people, and they clearly weren't all just family. If he could fill an arena with family, geez, You know, I hate to want to take that family out to dinner because you'd be broke. You know, they'd fill up your place, Sal. But the truth of the matter is that what a guy like that could do is what they used to do. You know, when you look back at the history books, especially in the heavyweight division, you see these guys that won the title. And a lot of times you don't see them fight very often after they won their title. Well, the reason was they used to make their money touring as the champion. You know, Jack Dempsey did it. You know, Jack Johnson did it. All the great fighters up until really the 50s. Well, actually, I guess Joe Louis was changed, bucked that trend. So all the way up until the 40s. That's exactly what they used to do. They used to win their title. And then they didn't defend it, or they would fight, but it would be non-title fights. And especially as a heavyweight champion, they would make their money outside of the ring. Well, after last night, and after seeing the fanfare that Cancio has, and accomplishing this belt, I would sit down with him and I'd say, okay, unless we get blown away by a financial opportunity against a fighter that, you know, is a winnable fight. What I mean by that is a fighter that's the same size as Cancio, a fighter with similar attributes, etc. That's a high demand fight. I would recommend and advise this fighter in his particular situation with 2 kids and blah blah blah, is to, you know, go out and make as much money as he can as the champion. Retire as the champion in his town. Do you realize how much money he could probably make in endorsements? He could sell cars, and I don't mean as a salesman, but endorse, hey, I buy it from Sal's Auto Group. Make sure you get the car. You know, all the commercials. I mean, he could make a substantial living off of what he accomplished last night, Sal, and still keep all of his faculties, raise his kids, and live a good life. I mean, this is the choices that a real, like a management team that cares about you and looks at all of the angles for you as a human being and as a fighter is what you need to consider. Not just stick him in the ring real quick against somebody, throw him some extra money, and then, you know, he's just another champion who made, won a title. They'll call it a fluke. He'll never get the recognition he has right now, Sal.
It's true. And, you know, people have selective memory, but they also forget. And I'll tell you what, you made a lot of good points. You know, that used to be the model. I mean, you know, even Jerry Quarry, when he became a contender and he fought Ali, I mean, he had a little bit of notoriety and celebrityism, and he got paid to show up and do this, do that, act a little bit. A lot of fighters, they like to parlay their success. They like to be called in. They like to get paid money for appearances. They like to mingle. And that's part of the rewards that you're fighting for. It's part of the whole package, you know. When a fighter has a picture of what he wants to evolve, what he wants to gain, and what he wants to do, I'm sure that that's built into the whole image of having a world title championship belt. Maybe one day going into color commentary. Maybe one day showing up or being involved in boxing, not just in a ring, but on the outside, or being celebrated as a great world champion for as long as you can. So, yes, I think that's a smart approach. And, you know, if his camp does have his best interest in mind, I'm sure that, you know, they're talking, they're looking into those options today, because it's a great Sunday to do all those things.
Well, make no mistake. When they went to Cancio and offered him the fight, they beefed up the money, and they made him basically say, well, he should come out of retirement and try his hardest. I know the spin last night was, he figured he'd give it one more shot. Nah, he got the opportunity. So here's the opportunity. He got it. Now he's got a belt. So let's assume he made a decent payday last night, and now he's got the belt. Well, the first thing that people are going to talk him into is defending it. You know, and my point is, unless it's the type of money that is so extravagant to make a defense that's worth that risk, I would try to parlay it like I suggest, and take the celebrity that he had to begin with, and now it's even bigger, and utilize that and walk away as a champ. I think in his case that might be the smarter role. That's all. You know,
it could be. I mean, they make movies over this, you know. So yeah,
This is true. This is true.
so true.
Just as we get ready, as we're getting closer to the end of the show here, there's a couple of fights on next week that I'd like to take a quick look at. And one of them is one of my favorite fighters. Leo Santa Cruz is fighting on regular television, prime time, 8 p.m. on Fox Sports. He's taking on Rafael Rivera. Now, Rivera is a substitute that we just found out about a couple weeks ago for Miguel Flores. Leo Santa Cruz was originally scheduled to fight Miguel Flores, which seemed like a good matchup on paper, but Flores hurt his shoulder, so rather than cancel the fight, the card, the television slot, they found Rafael Rivera. Now, Rivera is actually a bigger fighter. He's ranked in the super featherweight division. This particular fight is for Leo Santa Cruz's featherweight title, the WBA featherweight title. But here's the thing, Sal. He's ranked number 77 by the computer in the world in the super featherweight division. Leo Santa Cruz is ranked number 1 in the featherweight division. You know, so how competitive is this fight going to be? You know, now, in all due respect, Rivera is a young kid. He's 24 years old. He's got a record of 26-2, 17 of those wins coming by knockout. And his 2 losses, he was never stopped. He lost by decision. And he's roughly the same size as Leo Santa Cruz, who's 6 years older at 30, who's 35-1 with 19 wins coming by knockout, and he too did not get stopped in his loss. It just, on paper, does not seem like it's going to be a competitive fight. What's your thoughts?
Well, on paper, as you said, and that's the whole thing. That's why we go to the fight. That's why we go back to the well and we look at it and we watch, because anything could happen. And on paper, maybe the odds aren't on his side, but the variables all come into play that night of the fight. And I think it is something that only time's going to tell, and we're going to see what happens if he does.
Well, it seems like Leo Santa Cruz, he's a fighter's fighter in my opinion.
Oh,
I love watching him. I love the way he fights. The thing I don't like is that moving of the hand thing. I mean, that's going to hurt him. And the older he gets, that's going to be the demise of him. But we'll be talking about that fight next week. We'll be doing our post-fight on that. But I don't think it's going to be a competitive fight. Rivera just has not fought the level of opposition by any way, shape, or form that Leo Santa Cruz has. And the age, although in boxing, youth is usually gets to lean. You lean towards the youth. But not so much in this one. The other fight on that card is going to be another. The Leo Santa Cruz against Miguel Flores would have been, in my opinion, a competitive fight. But the co-main event on that card, Omar Figueroa against John Molina, that ought to be an intense fight. Both of these guys throw a lot of punches and take punches. So that ought to be an interesting. John Molina is a type of fighter that lets you beat the crap out of him, and then you're thinking he's almost done, but you can't lift your hands anymore. Next thing you know, he stops you. And Figueroa has done similar stuff. So I think this is going to be an exciting fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very good fight, and you never discount Molina and Figueroa. I'll tell you what, I think it's a great fight. I'm looking forward to that fight equally as much as Santa Cruz.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. There's a couple other fights next week as well that are going to be available on television as well. ESPN is going to have Rob Brandt against Kasan Bangsigurov on that one, and Bangsigurov is a talented fighter. And Rob Brandt, he had lost in the super middleweight tournament, but came back as a middleweight and is doing well. As a matter of fact, this fight is for the WBA regular middleweight title. You know, I just it boggles my mind that the WBA has the scruples to even refer to their title as a regular title, and then the other title in the same weight as their super title. I mean, they just don't care, you know. But and then also the same day, February 15th, Shohan Ergazev against Mikhail Fox in the junior welterweight as a main event on Showtime as well, Showbox series. So got some decent little fights coming our way next week. And then, of course, the week after, Sal, some more. So we got a busy 2019 so far, which is all good.
So far, I'm telling you. And you wait till I'm sure we're going to have some great spring and summer fights, and then fall, we'll close it out. We'll be talking about what a great year 2019 was for boxing.
Hey, slow it down. Why are you rushing the year already? I mean, come on, you know. But in any event, any final thoughts, my man?
I'll tell you what. No, I think that it was good to see the fights. I want to see Davis keep on the right track. That's all. He's a good fighter, talented fighter, and I like him a lot. And I think he's going to be the face of boxing for a while if he plays his cards right.
Yeah, I agree. I hope he stays on the right track for sure. Don't forget, if you know where we and Coach isn't allowed because
Coach knows it all.
He already knows. But if you know where we broadcast our first show, which was 15 years ago. If you can email me the correct answer where we broadcast our first show from, Billy at Talkin' Boxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. I will send you your very own copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game, the same game that Alex does our Blast from the Past. And speaking of Blast from the Past, don't forget to tune in to our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week television network, the Billy C. Boxing Network. It's on all the major streaming services like Roku and Google Play and a bunch of others. For all the information on where you can watch it on your television and to create a free account, just go to GINICOUSA.com. That's GINIKOUSA.com. 24/7. If you go up there right now and watch the network, we've been putting up replays of this show as well as shows from years gone by, and then also all of our special, the whole Billy C. Boxing Revisited series are up there. We have other events we've done. We've had the pre- and post-fight shows that we've done at Sal's place. So all of that stuff is up there. Some great interviews with former world champions and Boxing Hall of Famers. So you're going to want to check that out for sure if you haven't already. So make sure you create an account and watch it 24/7. But anyway, hey, listen, boys and girls, that concludes our show for today. All I'm going to say is this. Make sure you tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.